Good morning. It's just me today. Talk about a few news stories, the most important being Binance. But first, there's a series of articles out talking about how social networks are now dropping all the controls that they instituted in the latter days of the 2020 election. After they'd already gotten most of the money for advertising, they suddenly developed a conscience and decided to limit disinformation on the platform. And now that we're entering a new election season, and there's a ton of advertising money to be made, they're all changing their mind and choosing to allow disinformation again. The spoiler candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is getting a lot of love from the crypto bros in San Francisco and the tech bros, Elon Musk, and so on, which I suppose is because they actually want Donald Trump and they think that he can siphon enough votes from Biden to make that happen, which may very well be true. And so in order to, YouTube has now announced that they're going to allow election denialism. So it'll be okay to lie about the 2020 election because they wouldn't be able to get any Republican campaign money without it probably. And Instagram is going to lift their ban on Robert F. Kennedy. And the ban for him was because he constantly lies about vaccines, claiming vaccines cause autism, and I think also that the COVID vaccine is poison and such, which is probably a lot more serious. I mean, I'd be sort of interested to see how that plays out. I think if you allow someone to lie about medical information and then people die, you should probably be legally liable for that. This is sort of like, Fox News showed themselves to be more responsible, you could say, than Twitter, or than CNN, I should say, because CNN held a live town hall with Donald Trump and he was just full of lies about the election and they didn't stop him. But on Fox News, they only allowed Trump to be pre-recorded so they could cut out the lies about the election because, of course, the Dominion lawsuit is so serious for them that they really had to knock it off. And I suppose if Instagram gets sued by some people that died from not taking the COVID vaccine, there might be a similar effect there. We'll see if that actually happens. And Twitter has a court filing, which there's a good article on TechDirt about it that's quite interesting. So Elon Musk bought Twitter, and he said the reason he bought Twitter was to promote free speech, and his big promise was he was going to dump the Twitter files, which was going to be his proof that Twitter was banning conservative content specifically. And he claimed over and over that the Twitter files proved that that was true, but in fact, they proved completely the opposite. What they showed was that various people, including Democratic politicians, would send in statements saying, this particular tweet violates your terms of service by threatening to kill somebody or otherwise. And then Twitter would sometimes take it down and sometimes they wouldn't, but there's no evidence that they were under the control of the government or taking particular pressure from one side or the other. They were just trying to moderate content. Of course, it's become clear that Elon Musk doesn't think there should be any content moderation, except that anybody that he doesn't like gets booted off arbitrarily. Anyway, so now he has gone to court. And in court, there's a filing from his lawyers saying that they are ignoring their own boss, which Mike Masdick talks about as quite a surprise here. In the court filings, they have to say that none of that was true. There's a lawsuit about it, but his own lawyers say, no, our client is completely wrong about all this. And in fact, there was no evidence here. But this is something he's surprised. I'm not surprised at all. This is what happened with all of Trump's lawyers. Trump's lawyers had to say, everything my client said is a lie. And Giuliani, for example, had to go in court and say, no, I'm not claiming that the election was rigged. Whereas out of court, he says that all the time. In court, he couldn't say it. And this is the modern post-fact situation, which is more blatant than it used to be in America. The politicians lie like crazy. But still, for some reason, in many courts, you still have to tell the truth. Now, the Supreme Court doesn't hold themselves to this standard, as a case about a high school coach leading a prayer indicates. The majority verdict saying that it's okay to have prayer at a school event where the players feel pressured to join is approved because they said he did it in privacy, and the dissenting voice included photographs of him having it in public. So they made a ruling based on an absolute 100% lie, which, and anyway, that's not as common as it could be, and we may get there. But for example, all the lawsuits that Trump brought up about the 2020 election, he lost, even the ones before the Supreme Court, full of people he chose, because they still wouldn't go with like a blatant, bald-faced lie. So anyway, our courts are a place where you have a higher degree of truth than the political sphere, what people say. And it is, I think, fairly common now that these right-wing characters have lawyers that have to go to court. Tacopina did this, defending Trump. Trump at this civil rape trial was putting on Truth Social saying, I'm going to show up and testify to defend myself. And then the judge says, all right, is he coming or not? And his own lawyer was in court saying, you see what I have to deal with. He says he's coming, but then he doesn't show up. I don't know if he's going to show up. Probably not. You just have to ignore everything he says. I can't control him. And this is the case of most of these lawyers defending these right-wing characters in court who lie all the time. Anyway, so the lawsuit against Binance looks fairly serious. As you know, FTX was destroyed a few months ago by a lawsuit that exposed that they were not remotely a reputable financial institution. They didn't even keep track of the money. They took customers' funds and invested them in risky things without telling them. They just siphoned money off for other purposes. And in particular, the main accusation I see against Binance, there's two big ones I see here. One is that they did the same thing. Binance wanted to avoid being regulated in America, so they claimed to be offshore, and they claimed that U.S. citizens could not make an account or use Binance. There was a special subsidiary called Binance.us that would operate differently, and all of that was a lie. I'm pretty sure I made a Binance account a few years ago, even from the US, and there was no trouble doing it. And they say that was the case. There never was any control to actually stop you from making an account from the US. And in fact, there was no separation between Binance and Binance US. And in fact, they tied in a couple other companies, all controlled by the same guy, CZ. So he didn't actually comply with any of the regulations or agreements. He just made a thin pretense of complying by creating another company, which he controlled, and pretending that that was an independent company. And that's the shell game, which is certainly illegal, in my opinion, not that I'm a lawyer. And the other one was wash trading, which we've seen a lot of exposés about from David Gerard and Molly White, where they would pump up the price of crypto assets by just selling it to themselves and trading it back and forth, like having a shill at an auction to make it seem like this thing is popular and it's going up. All crypto exchanges are rife with this, as far as I can tell, but they have apparently chapter and verse of Binance doing it by trading back and forth with other companies that appear to be different, but they're not different. So we'll see where this all comes out. But, the reason crypto was expected to go up about a year and a half ago is because it was going to become respectable. It was going to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange in funds. It was going to be used for pensions and everything else. Even about a year ago, everybody was opening legitimate sounding financial instruments that were going to invest in crypto. And all that was based on it finally coming out of the shadows and being accepted as a mainstream financial instrument. And it looks like that dream is going down, because Binance is really big. Now, CoinDesk still exists. They haven't been sued that much. They're very careful to obey the law as much as anybody does in this space. But the big players are going down. And I think that's a real blow for the legitimacy of crypto. Anyway, DEF CON has announced at the satellite or space travel village, aerospace village, they're going to have a satellite you can hack while it's in space. They've set up this Moonlighter satellite. I think it's a small one, and they're going to let people hack it in space. They've set up some kind of hacking playground where you can hack some part of it. And so that should be pretty exciting at the aerospace village. I'm sure they'll have other CubeSats you can hack on site and simulations of CubeSats, which they've had before. But this is the first time I've ever heard of any contest where you actually hack a real satellite in space. And I think that's wonderful. Satellite security is very important, and you learn a lot from these things. And the last thing, I'm not sure what to make of BART, our local light rail, has a real problem at crime, I must say. Some of my friends won't ride BART at all anymore. When I ride it, it's a creepy experience because there's a bunch of creepy people just hanging out on BART. Some of them are pickpockets. Some of them are homeless people and drug addicts who just live on the trains. And otherwise, there's just a lot of disturbing criminal activity on and around the trains. And apparently, they're harassing women, which I didn't know, but it makes sense. And so BART's response to this is to get people to get cards. They're handing out cards. So cards say something like, I've got you. And the other one says something like, I need help. And the idea is somehow if a woman is being harassed by some scary guy, she's going to hand this card to a stranger who will like have a matching card. And somehow this will make her feel safer. I'm highly skeptical of this. There was a similar movement about 4 years ago at DEF CON. Women were getting harassed at DEF CON, and there were some cards. You were supposed to carry these cards to say somehow I'm an ally and I'll help you if you're being harassed. And as far as I can tell, it never really went anywhere or did anything. It seems very unclear to me that this is actually going to make anybody safer. It seems to me like if you want to fix the problem, you need to actually have like more police on the trains or something. Would be far more effective than this. Among other things, it seems to me like people could just take the cards and then be the harassers and pretend to help you and not help you. Anyway, I'd like somebody who has real experience with sexual harassment and how to prevent it to speak up here and say, is this really an effective procedure? It's very unclear to me how this does anybody any good. But anyway, that's what BART's doing. And that's all I've got for this one. There'll be another one of these on Friday.